Okay, tonight is Matthew chapter 23.
Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not.
Jesus is going to be speaking to the multitude, so basically to everybody who was there and around the temple and such, and really he's going to get into a lot of things in this chapter, things about the scribes, the Pharisees, and he's going to be pointing out certain things. And so in fact, in this chapter we're going to be not so much focusing on, let's say, why the scribes and Pharisees were not doing what they're supposed to, but really what we can learn from that for ourselves. Okay, so it says here, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Moses was the one in charge of the laws at the time, right? The law of Moses, okay, and he started with the Ten Commandments. So really all I'm saying is they're in the lawmaker's seat, right? So they're in the position where they can kind of determine what's right, what's wrong, and make laws, support laws, and so forth. Okay, but so they're in a position of authority, and that's the main thing trying to point out. But then now in 3 it says, and this is good advice for anybody that says, whatsoever they bid you observe. So in other words, what they tell you, what they teach you is good. All right, so you observe that. In other words, follow that, because they're telling you what you should and shouldn't do, and it's good advice they're giving you. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. In other words, do what they say, but don't try to copy what they do, because they're not following their own advice or their own laws or their own way of saying what you should be doing. Right? So that's and actually I've known people like that, by the way. Right? That, if you listen to them express themselves, they say, yeah, that's right. And then you find out that that's not how they themselves do it, but I mean that's okay. I mean that's on them, but it's still good advice they're giving. But just if you're going to say, well, because that person who has all this good advice or good knowledge is living the wrong way, that I should too, that's not a good conclusion. Okay, so that's all it's saying is that you can listen to them and the things they say are good, but don't try to do what they do, because they're not following their own words. Now there's a word that describes somebody like that. Right, that word would be hypocrite, okay? So that's usually what that means, or that is what that means, all right? A hypocrite is somebody who says one thing but does the opposite. And so that's, and that, as you can see, could make it confusing, because you would assume that somebody, especially if they're like forceful, and say, yes, this is what you're supposed to do, and then you find out that they don't do it. So, well, wait a minute, how could that be? Well, that's what they're looking at here, right? So they're saying, yes, what they say is good, but so listen to what they say, but don't do what they do, because they're not following their own words.
For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garments. And love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi.
So now it's giving examples of why he's saying that it's something you do. It's okay to do what they say, but don't go by their examples of what they do, right? So in 4 it says they put heavy burdens on other people, all right, and they basically let them do all the work, and they themselves don't want to do any. All right, but I'm sure they're taking credit for that, right? They'll probably go around saying, oh, we accomplished that. But other people doing all the heavy lifting, all right, as he puts it, they want to lift one finger to do the actual work, all right? They let others do the heavy lifting, if you will, all right? And then, but now in verse 5, and 5 is really more showing what this is about. And there's a word or two here that you may not be familiar with, okay? And so it says, I'll read it. It says, for all their works they do to be seen of men. Okay, so you can figure what that means, all right? That whatever they do is only when people can see. So maybe when others are around, there's only I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then nobody's looking here. Dad, you do it, all right? So in other words, they're only busy when somebody's going to see, and so therefore they think that they're doing stuff, right? Now it says they make broad their phylacteries. What phylacteries were? It says they consisted of 2 small black boxes containing small scrolls of parchment upon which are written 4 biblical passages, 4 in particular. these four passages all include the commandment to put this on as a sign, as a symbol of Jewish faith and devotion. Each of the black boxes comes with leather straps so designed as to enable one to be bound upon the hand and the other to be worn above the forehead. So imagine a little box, okay, well, it wasn't big, I mean, it's big or something, and it's enough to put in some pieces of paper with certain Bible verses on it, Old Testament verses, right? And it was supposedly, but by carrying that around on you, it meant that you were like keeping all the law. It was a sign that you were doing what was right, okay? And so they actually would strap one on the arm and one actually up here on the top of the head, and then we'll walk around that way at at certain ceremonies or certain festivals, whatever. So, I'm a devout Jew. See, I keep all the laws. See, I got my boxes on my head and my arm, and I got my Bible verses in there, and I'm going to walk around with them. All right. So what it's saying is that by itself is just show, right? If you're, now if you're really keeping it is one thing, but if you're just going to do it when people see you, it would be like us, when somebody's going to see you, you grab your scriptures and carry them around with you, like, oh, I'm so studious, all right? And then, but meanwhile, you've never even opened them, right? So it's when trying to create some kind of an impression that you're somebody who you're probably not, right? So that's why he says they make broad their phylacteries. In other words, they make them maybe even bigger than they should have, so everybody make sure everybody sees that I'm carrying this thing around with me, all right? But but what it really had no meaning to them. It was all for show, right? In their case, now the thing itself, I mean, had meaning to those who were devout Jews, but it's saying that these ones in particular just is all for show. Okay, so again, you can picture how that could come across, and like I said, if you wanted to make the impression of being studious or holy or devout, you can. It's like just putting on the clothes, but not really having it in your heart, right? And then the other half of that verse, and enlarge the borders of their garments. Okay, if you recall, like the Jews would have the prayer shawls, right? Things where they kind of hung down, and when they pray, they would kind of hold the end and so forth, all right? So that's why he says, enlarge the borders of their garment. Again, make it more obvious. See, we have nice big prayer shawls. We're praying all the time. We're praying. We got to get the scriptures on my head and on my arm, all right? So I'm a real devout Jew, all right? But it really had no real meaning for them because it was all for show, all right? So I mean, really, that's a real accusation and and a real point that he's making is embarrassing these people and saying, yeah, you may look the part, but you don't really have it on the inside. And then the 6 and 7 are similar. It says that they love the uppermost room at the feast where the important people sit, right? And the chief seats in the synagogues or the churches, again, where the important people would be seated. And greetings in the market, we call the men rabbi, or rabbi of course means teacher, right? So in other words, having some kind of a nice title, right? So you see the picture he's painting of these people, right? Some people who they're not really devout, they're not really devoted to God, but they like the titles, they like the nice seats, they like all the clothes that make it look like they're studious and holy, but it's not really happening on the inside.
But be not ye called rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted.
Right now, following up on the idea of the titles, right, which was introduced in verse 7, right, in 8 it says, be not ye called rabbi, it says, for one is your master, even Christ, and you're all brethren, right? So again, rabbi, to the extent that it's a title that elevates somebody, he says, don't be looking for the title that elevates you, consider yourselves all brothers, right, or all equal, so don't be looking to make yourself higher by having a fancy title, but rather seek to be equal with your brothers. Right, and so in 9 says, call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. Right now, as you're probably aware, all right, there's at least one other faith that they call a person the Father. Okay, and so for myself, I always wondered how they would get past a verse like this. All right, and unless they think they took that out, but it says specifically, don't call any man father because the Father is up there. you see, he's picking on these different titles that again, people would use to elevate themselves, to think they're somehow greater than somebody else, and he's saying that's not what it's about. So don't seek to be called a rabbi or father, or in 10 it says, neither be ye called masters, for one's your master, even Christ, right? So all these different titles that elevate somebody, reserve those for our heavenly Father and such, right? Rather than trying to get them for yourself, right? Because you have the Heavenly Father to look to, and not to a person for that. And then he sums it up with 11 and 12, right, which is a little lesson in itself, right? It says, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Okay, now, first of all, as you recall, we mentioned that minister and servant kind of mean the same thing, right? But we're not necessarily talking about a minister like we talk about a minister today. But it says if you want to be great in the sight of God, then be a servant to other people, right? And we've taught other lessons on that. We just talked about feet washing, the example that was given by Jesus, and how he was the Lord and Master, was serving as the servant to his disciples at that particular time, right? That was the lesson, right? That don't be afraid to be a servant to each other, and that if you really want to be great in the sight of God, then be a servant to each other. Okay, so rather than seek to be the elevated one and let everybody be your servant, right? That's not the goal. Is to look for ways that the people can serve you. It's to try to figure out how you can serve the other people. Okay, and the 12, right, is again makes it as clear as possible. He says, "Whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased," right? And abased meaning put down, right, or lowered. So it says if someone who exalts himself, in other words, looks to put himself above with other people, shall be abased by God, right? I mean, in this life, you may get elevated and get all kinds of respect and honor and whatever, but it says in the sight of God, the one who's a servant is the one who's great. So he who elevates himself or exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. All right, so somebody who's the humble one and not looking to put himself above others, they'll be exalted by God. All right, so it's the reverse of what you would normally think in this world. Normally, if you want to get ahead, you got to climb over people and be over people and push people down and so forth. And here he's saying really just the opposite, right? Somebody who puts himself up high will be brought down low, and somebody who puts himself low will be brought up high by God.
But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves.
All right, the part that's beginning now, okay, is if you wanted to try to envision this, all right. So Jesus is speaking, to a group of people, but really, he's calling out the scribes and the Pharisees. He's already talked about them being hypocrites, do what they say, not what they do, and such. And so now he's really actually getting worked up at this point, right? So when you a picture of him like just about shouting this on the in front of the temple and speaking to the people, right? And a lot of the verses for the rest of the chapter start the same way. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, right? And see, it's got an exclamation point at the end, so there's a lot of emotion with this, all right? And so every time you see this, and of course the word woe means, that bad things are going to happen to you as a result of what you've done, that God's going to bring some punishment down upon you at some point. So almost want to start with woe unto you means, you're in trouble for the way that you're living, right? Because God has seen that and recognized it, and it's not what he would want for you to be doing. All right, so now having said that, so in 13, right? See, it says, you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for neither you go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in, right? He's saying that, you, in the way you're living, are not headed for the kingdom of heaven, and because you're teaching people the wrong way, you're preventing other people from learning the right way. So that he's saying you're basically shutting up the doors to the kingdom of heaven, right? Because it's bad enough you're not going yourself, but now you're also showing other people how not to go there, but in a way of trying to teach them as if this is what you're supposed to do. You're leading people the wrong way. You're misleading people and leading them astray. right? So that's a pretty harsh way of putting it, right? You're not going there yourself. And everybody you teach, you're making them go the wrong way too. In 14 it says you devour widows' houses. I mean, I assume that doesn't mean they're eating it, but I guess they're taking things away from those who were poor, all right? And it says, and for a pretense make long prayer, all right? So we talked another time about vain repetitions and trying to make yourself look impressive by giving a long prayer, by saying the same thing over and over, or things that don't really add anything, all right? So again, he's putting it all out there. So again, you're trying to make yourself look like you're so holy, you got a lot to say to God, right? But yet you're stealing the widow's houses and so forth, right? Again, you're not really being men of God here, right? And then finally in 15 it says, again, I find all this kind of interesting, but to put it this way, it says you compass sea and land to make one proselyte. Okay, now a proselyte would be like a convert, all right? So we don't typically use that word here, all right? But like if somebody comes into the church and they're seeking the Lord, and then they're converted and they become a member of the church, in essence they're a proselyte, right? Like I say, we don't use that term, but it's somebody who comes and learns about God and is converted. But here he's saying you go out of your way and turn over the land and the sea to make one proselyte, and then when he is made, in other words, you've got somebody converted, then he said you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Right? In other words, you take this poor person that might have been innocently seeking God and teach them all the wrong things, and that you make them then be further away from God than they were before because you've taught them the wrong way. Right? So in essence, they're also responsible for the innocent people who they've heard and misled and taught them the wrong way. All right? So like I said, he's really coming down on them, saying that it's bad enough that you yourself aren't going the right way, but now you're affecting other people too, teaching them the wrong way and misleading them and making them go astray.
Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, Whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing, but whosoever sweareth by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift?
Okay, first of all, now he's referring to them as blind guides. Okay? And now, of course, you know what a guide would be. A guide is somebody who leads somebody and shows them the way to go. And if you might recall, we had a few verses in an earlier chapter where it says what happens when the blind leads the blind. They both fall in the ditch. Okay, you wouldn't want to be following a guide who's blind, all right? If you were looking for how to find a place, and the blind guy said, "Here, follow me," I don't think you'd be too anxious about following the person, right? Because you would assume that they don't know how to find the place themselves, right? So he's referring to them as blind guides, right? Now, the example that he's giving, right, it has to do with swearing, and not swearing as in bad language, but in swearing like, you say, I swear to God, kind of thing, right? In other words, trying to make that kind of a statement to reinforce that what you're saying is true because I'm swearing by something, right? And different times we've read about, swearing on the life of somebody or whatever, right? So it's all kinds of ways of swearing to show that this is really true because I'm swearing to God or swearing by whatever. Right now, the time that we read about it in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, you don't need to do that, right? Just tell the truth and let your speech be yea, yea, or nay, nay, and that's all you really need to do, all right? So just tell the truth, and then you don't have to worry about saying, I swear by this, I swear by that, all right? Now, apparently they didn't get the memo from Jesus, all right? So they're still into the swearing, all right? But on top of that, it says they even had a hierarchy of swearing. If you swear by this, it means more than if you swear by that, all right? And so, in other words, you should swear by certain things because those means more than something else, right? And now let's look at the example, right? In 16, it says that they're claiming that whosoever shall swear by the temple, that doesn't mean anything, it's nothing. But whoso shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor, which means he's obligated to do what he said, right? So in other words, swearing by the gold men more than swearing by the temple, even though the gold is in the temple. So he's saying, you've got it like totally backwards even in that to you, the gold in the temple is more important than the temple, right? Which, that doesn't make any sense. So he's saying that even in swearing, you're misteaching the people, all right? You're making them create hierarchies of things and say, if you swear by this, it means something. You swear by this, it means nothing, all right? And you don't even have it in the right order. That's why he said this in 17. He says, which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold, right? So I guess, the gold was the gold of the temple, was to belong to the gods, I guess. But, if it was in the temple, it had meaning because it was in the temple. The same gold outside the temple may not have had the same value. So it's the temple that makes it valuable, but yet you're saying the gold is more valuable than the temple that it's in that makes it valuable, right? So that's why he's saying it doesn't make any sense. He's just pointing out this misthinking of logic, right, that they're applying, right? And then the other is just a similar example. He says, and you say, whosoever shall swear by the altar, it's nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that's on the altar, he's guilty. So in other words, the gift that they're putting or sacrificing on the altar is somehow more important than the altar itself, which is the only thing that makes it worth anything, right? So if you would, like an altar, if it was in the synagogue, it would be just kind of an offering, an offering to God, or if it was in certain places, maybe it was the sacrifice that was burned, right? But again, it only means something because of the altar that it's on, because of the sacrifice. So to say that the altar itself is less important than the thing that it's making valuable doesn't make any sense, all right? So that's why I'm just pointing out that even in your swearing, you're not using good logic and teaching the people the right way. But the right answer is don't swear at all. Just tell the truth and be a person of your word, and then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar, sweareth by it and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple, sweareth by it and by him that dwelleth therein. And he that shall swear by heaven, sweareth by the throne of God and by him that sitteth thereon.
So this is kind of just a summary or a general statement based on what he said in the past few verses. It says, whoever swears by the altar, it swears by the altar and everything on it. In other words, the altar consists of everything that's on it, and which includes the gift, which they were somehow spiking out as more valuable. And likewise, in 21, if you swear by the temple, that covers the temple and everything that's in it. Not that you can spike out what's in it as being more important than the temple itself. And then further, it says if you look to heaven, that would include the throne of God and so forth. All right, so again, not that you should be swearing to God anyway, but understanding that God is in His heaven, and so anything you're mentioning heaven, that includes God, His throne, and everything. So he's just trying to point out how they're not thinking clearly and spiking out certain things and saying their own definition of what's more valuable than something else.
Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat, and swallow a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also.
Right, so this is more things that are along the lines of being hypocritical. Right, again, I'm more worried about how things look than what they really are on the inside. Right, so in 23 it says, you're quick to pay the tithes of all these different things. Why? Because people see that. Right, people see that you do that, but it says the weightier matters like judgment, mercy, and faith, which is really the most important things because it's how you treat other people. That is, it's like totally forgotten or pushed aside, right? So it would be like somebody who's let's see, to use today's examples, all right? Let's say it would be somebody who's a member of the church who says, I'm the best member of the church because I donate the most of anybody in the congregation. But meanwhile, they treat everybody mean and says that they don't show any mercy or even faith. That they don't really pray for anything. It seems like they hardly ever even mention God. But I'm the best member because I donate the most money, right? It would seem silly, right? But that's in essence what they were. That they were giving them things that people could see that they were giving, but yet they're treating people badly and not being good examples or good people of God They're just looking for ways to be praised because I gave stuff to the church, right? So because that's what can be seen, right? So of course the lesson for us is that it's not what it's about being seen. It's about treating people the right way, even when it's not seen, because God sees everything. 24 is just an example. It says you blind God would strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. In other words, you get yourself worked up or worried about a gnat, which is a little thing. I mean, not really a gnat, but I mean a little thing. And he said you could swallow a whole camel. So you're worried all these little things because they might make you look bad. But here are all these big things that are really what you should be doing are being ignored. Right? So that's what I was trying to say. That instead of straining about a gnat and say, you gave $1 less than you should, but him being these people, who cares about them? Right? It says you're picking on the little things and overlooking the bigger things because you yourself are not doing them. Okay. And then now in 25 and 6, all right. Now you can probably appreciate the example here, right? Talking about a cup and a platter, right? So in other words, what you would drink and eat out of, right? So imagine if you had this stuff that was clean, really nice, and you went into somebody's house and there was nice, clean cup and a clean platter, and then you looked inside and what was in it was like dirty water and things floating around in the drink or in the soup or whatever, and so in other words, it was disgusting what they were feeding you, right? Would you say, well, at least the cup and the dish are clean, right? So you wouldn't, I don't think you'd react that way, right? Because it would be disgusting, right? But he's comparing them to that, all right? Just worried about how it looks on the outside and on the inside, because really, obviously, the most important thing is totally overlooked, all right? So that's why he's saying in the 26, he says, hey, listen, clean first that which is in the cup and the platter, that the outside there may be clean also, right? So you put some good stuff in there, and then you don't have to worry so much about what the outside looks like because it'll be good because it's got good stuff on the inside.
Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity.
This is actually a familiar example that's given, right? That it says it's comparing them to whited sepulchres, right? Which sepulcher would be where people are buried, right? So it's a place for dead people, right? So it says he's saying that they're like the sepulcher that's all nice and clean and whatever, but inside it has what? It has dead man's bones, all right? So on the outside it looks beautiful, all right? But inside it's just got rotting bones and so forth. He's saying that's them. They're the ones that on the outside they look very nice and white and clean and so forth, but on the inside it's got the dead man's bones, right? As opposed to the life of the spirit, right? So if anybody ever asks you if you have dead man's bones inside you, the answer is no. You don't want to be the one that looks nice on the outside but has the dead man's bones on the inside, right? So he's comparing them to that, right? So in other words, you're going to make it all look nice and pretty where all these dead bones are, instead of worrying in your case about having the life of the spirit inside you.
Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. How can ye escape the damnation of hell?
Jesus is fully aware of how many of the prophets in past years have been killed, right, and martyred for their faith and for the message that they were bringing out, right? So now he says, you all build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of righteousness, and you're saying if we had been in the days of our fathers, we wouldn't have killed the prophets. In other words, it was their ancestors who killed the prophets, right? And so in essence, looking back, say, yeah, if we had lived then, we wouldn't have killed the prophets. Yeah, let's make the prophets' grave look nice and so forth. And, if you think about it, that's easy to say when you're not the one there. right? See, so to look back and say, let's say, they killed this prophet because the prophet was preaching that they needed to repent, or they were living a sinful life, and so they got tired of hearing it, so they killed the prophet, right? Now, 100 years later, or 500 years later, it's like, oh, if I had lived back then, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have killed that prophet. I would have been okay with it. Well, see, it's easy to say when you're not the one who was there, right? It's easy to say, oh, I would have been okay with that. Even as we listen to, some of the things that Jesus is teaching and saying and so forth, and at times we wonder, well, how can people have gotten mad at him or tried to hurt him or tried to kill him or whatever, right? But imagine if Jesus was here and now he was pointing to any one of us and saying, you're a sinful person, and you better change your life or you're not going to heaven, right? Now, I mean, if you knew it was Jesus and the Son of God, then presumably you would react appropriately. But if you were not sure, you would say, I don't like that, all right? I don't like hearing that. I don't like him, all right? That would probably be your first reaction, all right? So that's all he's saying here. It's easy to say hundreds of years later, oh yeah, no, if I was there, I would have been cool with it, all right? But let somebody get in your face even today and say, you're a sinful person, and not everybody's going to take that very well, right? As you can see in the world today, right? People don't take it well. So the idea that back then we would have been somehow more enlightened is probably not even true, right? So it's easy to say it later. I mean, 100 years from now, maybe people will look back to our time. So yeah, if I lived then, I wouldn't have got mad and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're living in it, it's different than looking back after the fact. So that's what he's saying here, is that it's easy to say if you weren't there, you wouldn't have done that, all right? But in 31 it says, but you're witnesses unto yourselves that you're the children of them which killed the prophets, all right? So certainly that it was your ancestors that did it, and you were taught, within that family line about this. So now 32 it says, fill ye up then the measures of your fathers. In other words, you're about to live up to your ancestors, because you're going to kill somebody else. And who was somebody else? Him, all right? And knowing what's coming, he says, you're about to live up to the legacy of your ancestors, all right? That you're saying, oh yeah, if it was me, I wouldn't have killed the prophets. Well, guess what? You came through that lineage, and you're about to kill someone else who is even higher than a prophet, which is the Son of God, all right? So that's what you're leading up to, is that it's easy to write it off and say, oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that. But now, guess what? You're going to have the chance to redeem yourself, but you're not going to. You're going to follow through and do just the kind of thing that your ancestors did.
Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation.
And further, right, in addition to himself, it says, in 34, it says, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes and so forth, because there would be others who would be coming, such as his disciples and others, who you're going to have the chance to kill and crucify and whip and so forth, all right? And you're going to follow through and do that, which history shows they did, right? And so it says, upon doing that, you now can carry within your family line, including yourself, all the blood of all the prophets that were ever killed, because your family line has killed all these different prophets. And he goes all the way back to Abel, from Cain and Abel, which was the first person murdered in the Bible. So this is all the way down to Zacharias, all right? So actually, I just noticed also, maybe you're looking at them alphabetically from A to Z, right? It could be another way of looking at it, but I suspect Abel, because he was the first one, and all the way down to Zacharias, he says, all these ones that were killed, he says, that blood is on you and your family, and you're going to continue that with the ones that will be coming in the future.
O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord.
Now, verse 37 is one that it's in the Old Testament, right? And it's quoted every so often. And this is really the lamenting of the Lord, right? And looking at at Jerusalem in this case, all right, or really the house of Israel. All right, it says, Jerusalem, and oh Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that thou that kills the prophets and stones them, how I would have gathered you together. In other words, saying that really I wasn't looking for you to be the bad boys, all right, here. I was looking at you. It says, like, how often when I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth or a chicken under her wings. That's really what he wanted to do, was gather them together like the chicken gathers the chicks. All right, he says, but you wouldn't. You wouldn't cooperate. You didn't want to do what I had taught you or what I was trying to entreat you to do. Right. So that's more of a lamenting thing, and saying, really, here I sent my son to teach you, to die for you, to whatever, and you're rejecting it all. Right. He says, I was looking to gather you together, and instead you're not willing to go along with that. Right. So it's more of a lamenting rather than a condemnation at this point, even though there's been lots of condemning in this chapter, right? But he said that's what I really wanted, was to gather you together like the hen gathers the chicks, but you wouldn't cooperate, right? And so now your house is left unto you desolate, which is or empty of the Spirit of God, right? And now 39 is really looking in the future a little bit, right? It says now I say unto you that after this is done, not necessarily after this particular speech, but after the whole thing, he's about to be crucified and to resurrect and so forth. It says that now after that you shall not see me until you shall say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord, right? Which means that the next coming of Christ, right? That's really what it's referring to. Is that you're going to kill the man now in the next few days, and then you're not going to see me again until such time as I come again, and then everybody's going to know, says that Jesus is the Lord. And so he said that's. Next time you see me, you're going to be saying, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord, because it'll be obvious to everybody that that's who's coming, is the Son of God coming back for his second coming. Right? So what you've heard here in this chapter is, again, like I said, it's almost like him letting off some frustration with the people, especially to the extent that they're hurting other people by misleading them. Right? And so he's saying, the way you're going, the Lord is not pleased. Right, because you're hurting not only yourself, but even other innocent people. And so he's pronouncing all these woes upon them, right, finally ending up to say, well, you haven't gotten it now, you're going to follow through and kill me anyway, but the next time you see me, you're going to know who I am, and you'll say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the